conversation was filmed at a local bar and concert venue, Casa del Popolo. Casa is one of the only venues associated with the Suoni per il Popolo festival that has a wheelchair-accessible entrance. Also, we want to acknowledge that Casa del Popolo is situated on the unceded lands of the Ganeagahaga Nation, in Tshuma, Montreal, Quebec. Today, this land is home to a diverse population of indigenous and other peoples. We acknowledge the social, political, and cultural disablements of colonial violence and indigenous displacement. We understand that achieving access will be an ongoing process, and similarly recognize that we must develop a lasting practice of decolonization which prioritizes indigenous experiences and perspectives. We view this territorial acknowledgement as a starting point, and commit to actionable measures of restitution and reparation. Thanks to the Access in the Making Lab, Aimee, for the basis of this acknowledgement. This conversation was produced by Tshuma and Aimee Louw, co-founding members of Accessibilize Montreal, Simone Lucas, Aimee, Suoni per il Popolo, and the Feminist Media Studio. Meet the artists.
Well, I'm very happy to be seated with you both today.
Yeah, so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to be here too.
I'd like to introduce the lady to my right, the lady to your left, Simone Lucas. She's a video artist, educator, and community activist, and she works for the Feminist Media Studio and Access in the Making Lab at Concordia. And part of your role there, right, is to purchase equipment, audiovisual equipment, and to do research there, right? No.
Yeah.
And she's my good friend.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
she got to meet my puppy today.
So lovely.
Well, it is an honor for me to introduce Aimee Louw, a very, very good friend of mine. We come a long, long way in life. That's for another day, for another discussion another day. But she is a writer and a producer who co-hosts the discussions series #Crip Talk Corner, and the creative director of the Unruly Writers Club. Wow, that's amazing.
Unruly.
Unruly.
Yeah.
Sorry, unruly.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
Yes, that's amazing.
That's the key word.
She and I help organizations and projects integrate accessibility into their practices whenever we can. Thank you,
That's
ladies
true.
and gentlemen.
That's true.
Yes.
Thank you. And last but not least, here is Tshuma. Very talented person who I'm still getting to know. He was born in Zimbabwe and he has a physical disability. He moved to Canada in 2001 and studied at Concordia in integrated music. He's the co-founder of the United Tribulation Choir, and he's a singer, musician, vocal coach, and sound engineer. Very excited to be here with you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too. I would like to describe what we are wearing and our physical for those with visual impairment, so you know who we are and you can actually be able to identify us and the space in our surroundings. So I'll start off with Simone. She has kind of brown, long, with a bit of blackish, but yeah, dark brown hair, and glasses. She wears glasses, brown eyes, and a beautiful smile, and wearing a gray turtleneck and black shoes, sitting on a chair and like kind of leaning more forward. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce as well, again, Aimee. Of course. She has a light brown, goldish hair and a nose ring, brown eyes, pink lipstick on, and yellow dress, green top over, and leg crossed right now, leaning back at the chair on the chair, and yeah, we're kind of sitting in a semicircle, looking at each other, smiling. The space we're in is really we have a nice cool background with the main color is red, and with some, I think it's a hand with fingers, and it's kind of bluish. And in front of me, we have trees with nice leaves, and Aimee's a nice puppy.
Yeah. I don't know if she's in
Relaxing down
the
there.
shot.
Yeah.
May not be in the shot.
Yeah, but
Unfortunately.
unfortunately, she's not in the shot. So anyway, that's it for me, and hope you enjoy what we have in store for you.
The story of a sound booth.
So as Aimee said, I work at 2 research labs at Concordia University, the Feminist Media Studio, and a forthcoming lab called Access in the Making. And part of my role is purchasing equipment. And in 2019, the Feminist Media Studio received some funding to buy new equipment, and I wanted to buy specifically something that could work as a sound studio, or set up a sound studio for the members of this research space. The students and profs in our department didn't really have access to a sound studio to do their audiovisual work. So that seemed like something really important to me. And for those of you who don't know, a sound studio is a room. It's sound isolated from the sounds coming from the outside. So the sounds outside will not penetrate this room. And then within the room, there's a kind of sound treatment with lots of foams that have different shape that kind of do an ideal sort of reflection and absorption of sound, so that voice, music, sound effects kind of have an optimal quality by industry standards. And if you're listening to radio, a lot of podcasts, a film that has narration in it, a film that has sound effects in it, a band, most of these things were recorded within a sound studio. So it's a pretty important part of the creative process if you're doing film or audio work. And a sound booth is sort of the same principle, but it's a standalone. So it's like a little booth with, again, it's isolated from the sound, it has sound treatment, it has a microphone, it has different equipment, all for sound recording. And I wanted to find a setup so that the students could access this. And along the way, I found a sound booth that could kind of fulfill this purpose. But when I saw the booth, I realized right away that it was not accessible. It's about the size of a shower, it's elevated from the ground, and it was, quite small. And it seemed unacceptable to me that we would have a sound booth that some students wouldn't be able to physically get into. So I set off on a kind of journey to accessibilize this booth, and Paul and Aimee joined me along the way, and we're here to talk and have kind of a 3-way exchange today about sound recording, accessibility, sound art, sound studios, and disability.
Making sound. Barriers to access.
You're both artists, and you do sound work and music work, so I wanted to put it to you, what are some of the challenges as artists and creators that you've encountered in terms of access, and specifically when it comes to sound and sound recording?
That's a really good question. Like, the list goes on. The list is actually long, but for the sake of our audience, I'll touch on a few challenges as an artist, as a musician, as a singer, when it comes to recording. Especially here in Montreal, there aren't many accessible studios. You may have a space, but going into the actual studio recording space it may not be accessible. So what I've encountered along the way when I did an album recording with United Tribulation Choir, which is one of the biggest projects that I've ever taken on, is that we had to do most of our vocal recording in an auditorium, in a theater. And yes, there was the guys tried to minimize the room sound, but it's not the same feeling as you would have in a studio. And also the most challenging thing when you're recording in a theater room and the sound booth is upstairs where it's not accessible, it makes it really hard to communicate with the people that are recording, because sometimes you may want to say something during the actual recording, but you cannot because you're totally in separate spaces. And as a producer and a director, you want to make sure that what these guys are hearing is what you want. And if you cannot hear what you want to hear, and you're trusting your project on somebody, it makes it a challenge. And it's been a really challenging journey over the years, and it has always been, you as a producer, as a musician, you have to adapt to what you have and work with it and accept the outcome, which doesn't really give you much of a choice.
Yeah, and you have to really trust the people who are in the booth, who are making those choices
Right.
live, basically.
Right.
That they know the sound and the quality and the aesthetic and whatnot that you want too, right?
That's it. Yeah, yeah. And it's tough because you really don't know. Sometimes you get the results, but you don't get exactly what you were hearing in your head, and you're like, if this was accessible, this would have been avoided. This would have been avoided, because people hear things differently. So what you hear is not necessarily what you, Simone, would want, or what Aimee is hearing in her head. So what I can hear may not